Earlier on Thursday, advertising giant WPP announced it generated almost $4.5 billion in revenue, an increase from the same time last year, but slightly below analyst expectations.
That's very unkind. It was slightly above certain analyst expectations.
You called it hope. You called it choppy. Your term was choppy, which is how you described the first quarter.
I said, like the curates say, good in parts. So there are good parts like the UK and Western Europe and Latin America. Asia was a little bit bumpy, China, mainland China, but places like Vietnam and the Philippines and Indonesia were good. US was tough for us because we had a bad new business record at the end of last year, but it's picked up well in the first 4 or 5 months of this year.
But you also said that the media trading was down. That was a drag.
Well, that was basically because of new business or lack of new business in the back end of 2016. But if you look at our top 20 clients, those that have reported, not all have reported, but if you look at the bulk of them, they're up about 1%. Gosh, this is a noisy place. In Q1.
It'll be done in a second.
In Q1. In Q4 of last year, they're up about 2%. So you're seeing very low top-line growth. The world is low GDP growth, little pricing power because inflation.
1 second.
We'll go to the bell. We'll come right back.
What a way to be introduced.
No, this is the peak.
A NASA astronaut to this.
Patrick Daly.
We're going to come right back to Martin Sorrell. The markets are closing flat. Dow up 8, S&P up 1. So despite the tax cuts, 2 days of 200-point up markets, we close here flat today. Martin, continue with what you were saying.
No, so it's low growth, low inflation, limited pricing power, focus on cost. So efficiency and effectiveness. You have a sort of what we call the trifecta of things happening. The first thing was disruption, and Airbnb and Uber and Amazon in hospitality and transportation and retail. Secondly, activist investors, for example, Nelson Peltz at Trian, in at Procter. This is the second activist investor been there. And last but not least, ZBB, zero-based budgeting to you. So Kraft Heinz bidding for a bigger company than itself, 1.5 times its size, basically, certainly in terms of market cap, and an aborted bid. But that has been a big psychological wake-up call because nobody, in a sense, is safe.
Look, when I looked at this, I'm wondering, are you ready to call Facebook and Google enemies? Because
frenemies.
No, I know you said frenemy.
They're friendly. They're friendlier today than they were a few years ago.
You're covering your face. I wonder what that means.
No.
No, here's why I want you to call them.
I'm pondering the wisdom of your question.
I want you to call them enemies because my belief is when we see that the IAB comes out now showing all the growth in media, digital media, going to Facebook and Google. We saw DCN say that a quarter ago. I think people are just spending with Facebook and Google, and that's hurting everybody else, and that's hurting you at this point.
No, that's not true. So our media book is $75 billion. That's what we invest with clients in media, online and offline. Online is about 40% of our business now. We crossed 40% first quarter of this year. But our biggest media investment on behalf of our clients and with our clients is?
Google and Facebook.
No, Google number one. Then the Murdoch nexus, let's call it, of Sky and Wall Street Journal and Fox and Star. And then number 3 is Facebook. I was very interested. I didn't see the figures for Alphabet. I don't know whether they've been announced yet. They're going to be announced tonight, and then Facebook next week. But certainly, we haven't got the final figures for Q1. But Facebook was up strongly in Q1. Google are probably a little bit less so in Q1, partly because of currency translation, because they're more non-US market dependent, and the strength of the US dollar probably affected it. We saw that in the back end of last year. But having said that, both are very strong, as you say. They dominate 75% of digital, and digital is 20% of the world market. Not us, we're 40, but 20% or 30% of the world market. So they're about 20% of the total global market. So you're right that they have tremendous power, but they are using that power, I think, in a sane way, in a constructive way. For example, in the brand safety crisis that YouTube had in the UK about inappropriate positioning.
It's a global crisis at this point.
Well, it spread, but the main part was they did respond. I mean, Google, I think, actually, to be fair, more than Facebook, they did respond and listen to what we had to say on behalf of clients. And I think a boycott of Google is ill-advised because, after all, whether you like it or not, it is the most important medium and channel.
Okay, so 39% of your revenue coming from digital now.
Yes.
Of that bulk, 39%, how much of it is coming from Google and Facebook?
Well,
or going to, rather?
it would be, it's difficult because when we look at it, we don't actually measure it as a proportion of digital, we measure it as a proportion of the total. So we're 5 billion with Google last year. Their total ad revenues were about 79 billion. Facebook, total ad revenues about 39, we were 1.7, up from 1 the year before. The reason why our usual market share is about somewhere between 25% and a third worldwide. In some markets like India, we're more around 50%. But what we see in digital, Google and Facebook are the long tail. Our traditional media business, the sort of stuff what you used to work with you on at places like Truffle Pig.
Maybe we'll work on it again someday.
Hopefully, please God. That traditional business, it's much more concentrated amongst the big advertisers. Google and Facebook have really opened up the primary demand for search and social advertising. Those people who didn't advertise before, the small and medium-sized companies, are now advertising.
Okay, so you don't know what percentage Google and Facebook of that digital, but how long will it take for that 39% to get the 51%? So when will that tipping point happen?
Well, I would say the market share of digital in our business is growing by at least 1% a year. So to get another 10, probably 5, 6, 7 years, I would say the longest. Usually when one makes these projections, they catch up on you faster than you thought. You know, if I have a regret, is we didn't go fast enough in digital. And if I was answering this question, or trying to, 5 years ago, I would have underestimated the impact. I wouldn't have said we were before.
But I think amongst the holding companies, you move the fastest, and you know I'm a great admirer of it.
That's a little bit unfair to some of the others, but we haven't moved as fast as I would like to. I mean, we've done 3 things. We've pushed our traditional businesses to embrace digital. We pushed our digital businesses to go faster, and then, as you know, with things like Truffle Pig and the Mail, etc., and Snap, we've experimented. Back those days, it was called Snapchat.
I know. Well, let me phrase the question I asked you earlier another way, with a compliment at the front of it. So maybe you'll answer what I want.
I'll scratch my nose again.
Steve Jobs once said that Apple sits at the intersection of liberal arts and science. And when I think about the business that you've built, I think it's very similar.
I wish that was the case.
Well, no, I think WPP sits at the intersection of a kind of liberal arts, creativity, and client advisory, and a scientific type work that you do with Zaxxas.
Yeah, there's bad men and maths men.
Right, but do you think in a world where there are fewer things that you're buying in digital, and digital becomes more of the pie, and Facebook and Google and dominate, and maybe Snapchat and Twitter get their piece, are you now back to liberal arts more than you thought you'd be at this point?
There is always a risk of disintermediation. I think the biggest disintermediation risk probably comes from other walled gardens. I mean, the Amazonian walled garden is probably one of the most, the toughest at the moment. I mean, for example, at the same time as Nielsen is not reporting growth of online consumption, and that's why their retail audit data is deficient. At that same time, you've got Amazon not only doing online sales, but saying to our clients, come to Seattle May 2nd or 5th to learn how you can disintermediate a Walmart or a Carrefour or a Kroger or whatever it happens to be. So I think we're well positioned, but there are challenges to it. I mean, you mentioned the frenemy risk. Google is our 10th largest client. So it's a mutually dependent and beneficial relationship, and we've grown with Google, less so with Facebook because search is so fundamentally important. And you look at the relatives, if Google's at 5 billion and Facebook's at 1.7, it's 3 to 1, roughly. And the year before it was about 4 to 1. So Facebook's catching up, but it's still a long way because search is such a powerful medium.
I remember a stream 5 years ago where it was even more. I mean, you quote that number every year. I remember one year it being billions for Google, and I think hundreds of millions for Facebook.
Well, Snapchat last year was 96 million. This year it'll probably be 200 million, which probably means that Snapchat will be close to $1 billion, if not $1 billion, this year in ad revenues. But it's a dwarf in relation to both Facebook and Google at 40 and 80.
I think on the Snap number, I think you tend to do these things more quickly, and I think that you doing it only on a percentage basis, I would say their number comes in lower. If you're going to do 200 million, if you're going to do 200 million, Martin, I don't think they're going to do $1 billion.
At the moment, we're looking at 200.
You dropped your mic.
Do you, do you?
Am I naked now?
Keep talking. Hope will ask a question, then we'll get it right.
Well, no, I mean, just on the topic of Snapchat, they're all sort of going after the TV ad budget, and so we saw for the first time that digital has now exceeded TV ad spending.
Yes,
do you,
not the first market. I mean, Denmark, I think, was the first market, then the UK, and now it's spread.
And do you buy into Snapchat's argument that, you know, it is a camera company and that it kind of is trying to own this media space that TV used to own?
I find that definition
time?
of a camera company a little bit difficult to go along with. I mean, what the thing that does, I was talking to the head of one of the telecommunications networks in Europe last week, and he'd gone to the app, the Facebook app developers conference, which
F8.
Mark Zuckerberg led off with this brand safety issue that we're all so concerned about. And the thing that he remarked was that Facebook really does have Snapchat in its sights, and that, in his view, it was going to be very difficult for Snapchat to get the sort of momentum it needs against a Facebook.
Well, do you agree with that?
Well, I'm a little bit more hopeful. I mean, we're looking, and we're probably biased, because on behalf of our clients and on behalf of ourselves, we'd like to see a third force.
Absolutely.
So whether it's AOL, whether it's Oath.
Force.
What do you think about Oath?
I think that as marketing,
I meant the name.
As marketing,
yes, I know.
It's rather like Cheddar, isn't it?
No, Cheddar's a great name. You can't forget it. Look, I think what you'll say about Cheddar and Snapchat being a camera company is, like it or not like it, you still remember it. Oath is like, one thing I'll say about Oath is, 100% of the time someone says Oath, the person on the other side says, what?
Well, Oath, with all its, if it does come together, which I'm told it will be, it'll be about $750 million. So that compares with 1.7 billion for Facebook and 5 billion for Google. So it's got a long way to go as well. Snap would, as I said, was about 100, maybe going to 200 this year. So that's a potential third force. AppNexus with our own Xaxis is a potential third force. So there are some around that could play that role. Amazon, in its way, big threat on search to Google. I mean, I think that is a meaningful. One of our companies reminded me today that of product searches, 55% in the United States emanate from Amazon. And talk about camera companies, you know, Amazon is inserting a camera into Alexa. So not only will you talking to Alexa, but Alexa will be taking pictures of you.
Telling you what to wear.
God help you.
Yeah, I know, exactly, all of us. Okay, something I really like to do on the show is ask very
sounds
important
like trouble.
people.
It sounds like Valley Girl, you know,
No, we're not.
Come on. Tie a tie or something.
I got 500,000 people watching this. Go ahead.
3 very important questions for a very important person, Sir Martin Sorrell. An honor for us to get you.
I thought you were sort of very intelligent until you asked that question.
Oh.
Very, very important. No way.
All right, I'm going to ask it anyways. As someone who was in the advertising agency for so long, business for so long.
Yeah, so old.
Your first ad that you ever created that was most memorable,
David Ogilvy always said that I'd never written an ad, and he was right.
Okay, fine.
You bought a wire, paper, and plastic shelf.
Yes, that's right. Wire and plastics. You're crediting me with too much. It wasn't paper. Wire and plastics.
Wire and
All
plastics.
right, three very important questions. The favorite ad that you've ever made, or that your company has made. Your favorite campaign that you haven't made. All right, so someone else's. And if you could head up a digital ad company right now, Facebook, Google, or Amazon, which one would you?
That's a good question.
Well, Amazon would be the answer to that, because I think it is so broad in its areas of activity. I mean, I saw a media owner who was saying how much Amazon would invest. You know, you see The Crown, and you see what Netflix and Amazon invested, 7 million an episode for an hour, 10 million.
Yes.
And you know, other companies are investing 3 million. So they don't know how to spell the word budget clearly. So I would say Amazon is extremely interesting, particularly at this stage in its development. On the first two questions, I really mustn't say that.
Okay.
Because I mustn't express a favorite either internally or externally, otherwise I get myself shot. But I do admit there was one language advert that one of our agencies did in Scandinavia about, and I won't go into the detail of it, but I actually showed it once at a conference, and it was an extremely funny ad. I mean, I like humor in advertising. I think that is the way to seduce the consumer.
The best David Ogilvy line ever is, the day you sign a client is the day you start to lose them. I live
Well,
by
I remember, it's funny you say that, Jonathan. I remember Charles Saatchi, when I was at, really interesting you say that. Charles Saatchi, when I was at Saatchi's, we won the British Airways, or they won the British Airways Cup. And I remember I was sitting in Morris Saatchi's office, and Charlie was in there, and he stuck his head around the door and said to Morris, "Wonderful news, but just imagine the day we lose it."
Right. All right, we'll end on that note. We'll let you go. You're busy. Sir Martin Sorrell.
No, I've always got time for you, Jonathan. Come back to Truffle Pig.
You let me know when. Sir
We'll even
Sorrell.
change the name to Cheddar Pig.
Ooh.
Really? Like that. Martin Sorrell, CEO, not chairman of WPP Group.
Get it right,
The
Jonathan.
man who started it all and continues to govern.
Try harder.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We have to
Nice
say
idea.
goodbye to Twitter viewers. Stay with us for the second hour on Sling and on Amazon. We'll see you after the break.